Good afternoon, you're watching AnewZ. I'm Nadia Jani. Here are the headlines. The US House of Representatives voted to continue military support for Ukraine. The European Union has agreed to impose a new round of sanctions against Russia, targeting the country's energy and financial sectors. Israel and Syria agreed to a ceasefire as Israel allows Syrian troops limited access to Suwaida. The US House of Representatives has voted to continue military support for Ukraine, with the measure passing by 353 votes to 76. Republican Congressman Don Bacon announced the outcome on social media. The strong bipartisan backing is expected to ease the bill's progress in the Senate, where lawmakers can amend, approve or reject the text. If passed, the legislation will go to President Donald Trump for his signature. Russia launched a mass drone attack on the Ukrainian Black Sea port city of Odessa early Saturday. A multi-story apartment building was struck, killing at least one person, according to Mayor Hennady Trakhanov. The city is still compiling a list of casualties as emergency crews work in high alert mode. At least 20 drones targeted the city, which has been hit frequently in the past. Civilian infrastructure was damaged and rescuers were seen pulling people from a burning high-rise building. The regional emergency services later said 5 people were rescued, but one of them later died. The best defended city in Ukraine, Kiev, is also the one hit the most. People from destroyed regions flock to the capital, but that only raises the risk to their survival. Let's take a closer look at the unpromised life underground for Kiev's residents.
In the heart of Kiev, scenes resembling passages from history books have become a chilling nightly routine. 27-year-old Daria Slavitska, like many others, packs a yoga mat, blankets and food into a stroller and descends into the subway with her 2-year-old son Emil. She hopes to get a few hours of sleep underground as air raid sirens wail above. For over 2 months, Russia has pounded the capital with nighttime drone and missile attacks. These strikes are straining air defences and exhausting its 3.7 million residents. Kiev, long considered Ukraine's safest city, is now bearing a heavier emotional and psychological toll.
We used to come here less often, about once a month. That was 6 months ago. Now we come here 2 or 3 times a week.
In scenes reminiscent of London's World War II Blitz bombings, thousands of Kyiv residents flee to deep metro stations each night. Slavitska's son, Emil, once terrified by sirens, has learned to accept them. She tells him the sounds are just thunder.
Before, when the Tu-95 bombers took off, they did not always target Kyiv. I do not remember the exact figures. If we remembered everything, we would have all died long ago. So we simply used to sit here. We just sat here. At 5 a.m. we went home and got some sleep. It was okay. Now it is no longer okay. Every single attack brings casualties.
In June, subway shelter visits surged to 165,000, more than double the previous month and 5 times higher than last year. The head of Kiev's military administration confirmed the reason by saying that scale and lethality of strikes have grown. In just 6 months, 78 people were killed and over 400 injured. In April, a missile flattened a building just kilometers from Slavitska's home.
Imagine a situation where you go out into the street and a person is shot right in front of you. Seeing all this, what fear you experience, your heart sinks, your eyes bulge. People experience this every day, this feeling.
But the danger isn't only physical. The long-term stress and sleeplessness are starting to take a toll. A recent study found that 88% of Ukrainians now report very poor sleep.
Sleep deprivation brings lack of concentration, memory, declined cognitive functions. It affects mood, causes mood swings, emotional downs, extreme anxiousness and apathy.
For Slavitska, the hope is modest. A thicker mattress to make the subway floor just a little more bearable, and maybe one quiet night without sirens.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has expressed doubt that Ukraine will join the EU before 2034. His remarks came after talks in Berlin with Romanian President Nicolae Dan was urged to admit countries that meet accession criteria. Merz said ending the war in Ukraine remains the top priority and that full reconstruction could take years before membership is feasible.
Our top priority is to do everything we can to end this war. Then we will talk about the reconstruction of Ukraine, and this will certainly also be linked to a process at the end of which Ukraine can also become a member of the European Union. But that will take several years. As I said, the priority is to end the war. The second priority is to rebuild Ukraine and then embed all of this in an accession perspective.
The European Union has approved tougher new sanctions on Russia after Slovakia lifted its veto. The measures target banks, energy and oil prices, aiming to increase pressure on Moscow to end the war. EU leaders have hailed the measures as some of the toughest yet.
The European Union has approved a sweeping 18th package of sanctions against Russia, targeting its energy and financial sectors. The goal is to pressure the Kremlin into a ceasefire in Ukraine. The breakthrough came on Friday after Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico agreed to lift his veto, which had stalled the deal for weeks. Slovakia had opposed the deal over plans to phase out Russian fossil fuels by 2027. But with that issue set aside, the sanctions were able to be approved. The new package includes a full ban on transactions with 22 Russian banks, the Russian Direct Investment Fund, and its subsidiaries. It also prohibits any use, direct or indirect, of the Nord Stream pipelines, which remain shut but are still of strategic interest to Moscow. Vice President of the EU Commission, Kaja Kallas, made the announcement on X.
Nord Stream pipelines will be banned, a lower oil price cap. We are putting more pressure on Russia's military industry, Chinese banks that enable sanctions evasion, and blocking tech exports used in drones.
In a major shift, the EU will replace its fixed $60 price cap on Russian oil with a flexible one. The new one starts at $47.60 and will stay 15% below the global average, updating every 6 months. While the United States has distanced itself from this revised pricing system, EU leaders hailed the package as one of the toughest yet. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomes the new restrictions.
A decision by the European Union that we all worked for together. We managed to strengthen the 18th package of sanctions against Russia for this war, and today the package has been approved. I thank everyone who contributed to this.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen declared that the organisation is striking at the heart of Russia's war machine and vowed that pressure will continue until the war ends.
The Kremlin has dismissed the EU's latest sanctions package, claiming Russia has developed immunity to such measures. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov called the restrictions illegal and said Moscow has long adapted to life under sanctions. He warned that the new package would also hurt the countries enforcing them, calling it a double-edged sword. The EU's 18th round of sanctions targets Russia's energy and oil sectors. Previously, we spoke to Daniela Mello, political scientist, regarding the recent 18th package of EU sanctions on Russia. Daniela shared her insights on the impact it might have on the Russian economy.
Obviously, one of the goals of the European Union is to use the tools at its disposal, in this case, financial tools, financial levers that it can use to sanction Russia and to pressure Russia to the negotiation table on a possible ceasefire. So what we're seeing here is primarily, again, the use of financial instruments that could, in fact, have an impact in the in the oil industry, the energy sector in particular in Russia. That is the great goal of the European Union. However, some economists alert that this could backfire, and if the price of oil worldwide happens to go up, Russia would still be able to increase its revenue from the oil sector in spite of sanctions. So it depends on a number of factors, whether or not the sanctions will be as effective as the European Union is hoping that they will be. Here we also have, of course, a very strong political message from the European Union that basically is signaling to the Russians that the Europeans are not going to back down from their support of Ukraine. And remember, this is coming at the same time when the relationship between Putin and Donald Trump is at its most frayed, and at a point in which the United States has agreed to sell weapons to the Europeans to continue supplying the Ukrainian front, and the United States itself also allowed for the Ukrainians to receive the Patriot missiles that they were expecting. So put all together, we can see that, the pressure is mounting on Russia in a way that hasn't in the past 6 months, at least since President Trump has come to power, because there seems to have been a shift, a political shift from the United States in alignment with the Europeans, which put all together with these sanctions actually reinforce the imposition of the sanctions, even if the United States has not necessarily bought into the dynamic price oil cap that the other members of the G7 seem to be eager to achieve through these sanctions.
Syria's Interior Ministry says security forces have begun deploying in the southern province of Sueda following intense clashes between Druze, Bedouin groups and government forces that have left hundreds dead. The Syrian presidency announced an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire on Saturday. Just hours earlier, US Special Envoy for Syria Tom Barak said Israel and Syria had agreed to a truce after days of bloodshed in the predominantly Druze region. Barak said the ceasefire was supported by Washington and welcomed by Turkey, Jordan and Syria's neighbours. To further unpack the situation in Syria, we are joined live by Yoshi Kapawasa from Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Good to have you with us, Yossi.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So, firstly, does it seem to you that the reconciliation between Israel and the new Syrian regime is doomed by both sides of mistrust, do you think?
Well, it's definitely not moving forward as expected. And the problem is that we have two question marks regarding the Syrian regime policy. First of all, are they really capable of controlling the country and bringing some kind of reconciliation between the different parties that make Syria? And secondly, are they interested in doing that? And we hope that this agreement that was reached tonight that guarantees the safety of the Druze minority is going to be kept and performed by the Syrian regime. But we are not sure that this is going to be the case, because we still see all kinds of groups that are supposed to be subordinated to the regime planning to carry out massacres against the Druze community. And we are worried, and we are watching very carefully what's going on over there.
Yeah, and do you think that President al-Shara has no control over the various factions dividing the country, or do you think he is actively supporting the offensive against the Druze? Which is more likely, do you think?
Well, I think both. He doesn't control all the factions. Some of the factions just openly said that they are not going to be committed to the agreement that was reached. And I think he wants to be in charge of the situation, but he is not. And secondly, he still has some groups within his administration and military that are committed to jihadist ideas, and they fight against the infidels, including the Druze and the Jews. And this is not a very good and optimistic sign towards the future if we want to reach some security understandings with the new Syrian regime. It cannot be based on this kind of situation.
Now, both theories jeopardize peace with Israel, which the Syrian president has defended as a unique opportunity in 100 years. Is peace still possible, do you think?
I think it's still possible. It depends much on the Syrians. We are interested in some stability as a beginning towards peace. It's a fragile situation. It can change. It can change every day now, and we have to see. We have expressed our willingness to move forward towards peace. We had the negotiations with the Syrians, both in Azerbaijan and elsewhere, and we were ready to move forward towards understanding. And we have to remember, we do have some common denominators that are joined by Israel and the Syrians. We both are interested in keeping the Iranians out of Syria. We both are interested in making sure that Syrian soil is not used by the Iranians in order to deliver weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And we are both interested in stability and security inside Syria. Allegedly, Shah says that he's also interested in respecting the rights of the minorities and the security. If this is going to be the case, there is room for movement towards peace between us and, or at least some understandings that would lead to peace between us and the Syrian regime. But for the time being, we are too busy defending the security of the Druze community in southern Syria, and this is overshadowing the prospects for peace at this point.
Right. And my final question is, Israel bombed Damascus and angered Trump, who wants to revamp Syria. Do you think that Netanyahu is wasting a unique moment of US support for his government?
No, I think the actions we took a couple of days ago, including bombing some major facilities in Damascus, were used in order to convey a message to Shara that there is a price to pay for not respecting our concerns, our security concerns, and our commitment to the Druze community. And I think he got it very well. This enabled the Americans to move forward with the efforts to bring about some solution to the problem. And this encouraged Shara to show some flexibility and readiness to move in the right direction. So I think we did the right thing by making everybody realize that we are ready to take action in order to make sure that stability is achieved.
Thank you, Yossi.
Thank you.
The Shusha Global Media Forum commences today as the final preparations for the major event have been completed. The guests arrive in Fuzuli. Our correspondent Aytan Shukurova has more.
The third Shusha Global Media Forum is set to begin tomorrow, bringing together nearly 140 international guests from 52 countries for high-level discussions on the future of media in digital age in Shusha, Azerbaijan. Hosting global media leaders here highlights the country's strategic pivot to soft power and digital leadership. This year's theme is digital transition, strengthening information and media resilience in the age of artificial intelligence. The forum explores how AI is reshaping journalism, combating disinformation, and building resilience in this field. Delegations from 30 countries and guests are welcomed at Fuzuli International Airport, a gateway to cultural heart of Karabakh. A forum on media resilience and digital transitions in Shusha sends a powerful message about truth, reconstruction, all central themes in today's information landscape, and reflects Azerbaijan's growing voice in the global dialogue, especially around media, tech, and geopolitics.
Tensions are mounting between Georgia and European Union as Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze hits back at what he calls political ultimatums from Brussels. The European Commission is pressing for key reforms tied to Georgia's EU aspirations. However, Tbilisi says peace and sovereignty comes first. Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze is pushing back against growing pressure from Brussels after the European Commission has sent a formal letter urging the Georgian government to implement 8 key reforms tied to the EU integration. In a strong response, Kobakhidze said that if the choice is between peace and stability or visa-free travel, Georgia chooses peace. He described EU's demands as political ultimatums and defended recent laws on transparency and family values as efforts to protect national sovereignty, not undermine democracy. But he did not stop there. He also defended Georgian Dream's honorary chairman, Bidina Ivanishvili, amid renewed talks on sanctions. According to Kobakhidze, Ivanishvili has already faced informal sanctions, alleging that 2 billion of his assets were already frozen in the European Bank without justification. She described such actions and further pressure on Georgia as signs of growing influence of a deep state in European institutions. As diplomatic tensions continue between two sides, Tbilisi highlights that the matter is the question of protecting national interests. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
In Yerevan, Armenia's Deputy Prime Minister Mehmet Grigoryan and Iran's Ambassador Mehdi Sabahani held talks on regional transport connections and ongoing developments. According to the Armenian government, the sides discussed prospects for unblocking regional transport routes. The meeting comes after Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan suggested the possibility of outsourcing control over the corridor through Armenia, an idea reportedly drawing interest from both the US and the EU. Kyrgyzstan President Sadur Japarov has signed the law ratifying the treaty between Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan on the junction point of their respective state borders. The treaty was first signed on the 31st of March this year in Tajikistan's city of Khujand. Kyrgyzstan's parliament approved its ratification on the 25th of June, completing all required domestic procedures. The treaty confirms the tri-point border agreement and aims to strengthen cooperation between Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Turkey's defensive industry continues to expand its global reach, with exports hitting $4 billion by mid-July, driven by a surge in new international contracts. The announcement comes just days before the 17th International Defense Industry Fair, which kicks off in Istanbul.
Turkey's defense exports reached $4 billion by 15 July 2025, rising from $3 billion in the same period last year. Haluk Gorgun, head of the Presidency of Defense Industries, said Turkish companies also signed $6 billion in new contracts during the first 6.5 months of the year.
According to my team, in the first 6.5 months of this year, our companies signed $6 billion worth of new contracts. Now, in defense, the sector typically has a seasonal pattern. The first part of the year moves along steadily, but activity ramps up significantly in the final quarter, often growing exponentially. Even if things continue at a linear pace from now on, the current figures show that we're well on track to surpass last year's totals, both in exports and in new contracts.
According to Gorgun, the figures reflect strong international demand and continued user interest. The country is on course to exceed its 2024 total of $7.1 billion. Turkey currently ranks 11th among global defense exporters and is expected to enter the top 10. More than half of last year's exports were delivered to NATO and EU countries, with the US and several European nations remaining key markets. Reflecting this growing international interest, the 17th International Defense Industry Fair, IDEF 2025, will be held from 22nd to 27th July in Istanbul and is expected to set new records in participation and product launches. Representatives from 96 countries are due to attend, compared to 54 last year. The first 4 days of the event are reserved for industry professionals, while the final 2 are open to young engineers and entrepreneurs. Turkish aerospace industries will exhibit its full lineup, from helicopters and UAVs to the Kian 5th generation fighter jet. Roketsan plans to unveil 6 advanced systems developed from research through to the prototype phase. Havelsan will present its artificial intelligence strategy, a new ship navigation system, and a virtual reality simulator for the Altay tank. STM will display its largest number of platforms to date and introduce a model of its national attack boat. The government is also providing financial support to smaller companies through the Defense Industry Investment and Development Program. Gorgon said 5.7 billion Turkish lira, approximately $141 million, has already been distributed to SMEs. In 2024 alone, $25 million was allocated to 25 firms. With a 33% increase in exports and major contract signings, the defense sector is expected to close 2025 with record performance.
Now we're going to go back to the Shusha Media Forum that is taking place today, and Orhan Amashov brings us the latest updates. Now, Orhan, I imagine it's very busy right now. What can you tell us? What are your first impressions?
Hello, Nadia. Hello. Very, very good afternoon to you from a sunny and staggeringly beautiful Khankandi. Yes, indeed, it's a day one of Shusha Global Media Forum, but the inaugural day, actually. This day is organized and taking place in the city of Khankandi. This is an international media conference held annually, and in this form and shape, it has been held since the year 2023. And as my colleague Aytan mentioned earlier, I think that in terms of foreign guests, there are about 140 foreign participants from 52 countries who are already arrived in Fizuli, and they are en route to Khankandi. And the major theme of this media conference could be described as digital pathways, media resilience and information strengthening in the age of the artificial intelligence. And as was the case last year, some of the major themes are revolving around digital technologies, media literacy, the impact of artificial intelligence on our daily life, on different forms of media, and many other related matters. It's an international conference, of course, and as we know, the centerpiece, as has been the case over the past 2 years, is the presence of President Ilham Aliyev at Shusha Global Media Forum, wherein he takes part in a Q&A session, responds to the questions addressed to him by international media, and everybody is of course, looking forward to that particular moment. And as I said earlier, so far, actually, welcoming ceremony has not yet started. It is kicking off today. I imagine in 2 hours, welcoming ceremony will take place. And actually, we'll be here with my colleagues every step of the way, informing you about the latest developments, informing you about the panel discussions, and providing, of course, naturally the best possible analysis. And also we'll come up with our wrap-ups, daily wrap-ups with my colleagues. Orhan Amashov, Javid Aliyev, and AnewZ.
Kazakhstan is seeing a major shift in foreign business activity. Russian companies are rapidly scaling back their operations, while Chinese firms are expanding their footprint in the local market. Fariza Kalimazina has the details.
Russian companies are leaving Kazakhstan in large numbers. According to Kazakhstan's Bureau of National Statistics, more than 720 Russian businesses pulled out of the country in the second quarter of this year. The number of active companies with Russian ownership now stands at approximately 17,600, marking the largest drop since 2019. This marks the 5th consecutive quarter of decline, and since April 2024, the number of Russian-owned firms in Kazakhstan has fallen by 2,100. The trend points to a return to pre-crisis levels following the sharp increase in 2022 after Russia's military actions in Ukraine. The downturn has affected all sectors, but trade and IT took the biggest hit, together accounting for over 55% of the overall drop. Despite this, Russia still leads all foreign countries in terms of active businesses operating in Kazakhstan. And meanwhile, Chinese business activity is rising. The number of Chinese companies grew by 503 in the same period,
reaching 4,500, with about 40% of that growth coming from the trade sector. Experts say geopolitical instability, sanctions pressure and economic uncertainty are prompting many Russian entrepreneurs to scale back or relocate their operations to other countries. Overall, the number of foreign-owned companies in Kazakhstan declined slightly, down by 254 to just under 44,700, largely due to the departure of Russian firms. Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ, Almaty, Kazakhstan.
That's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates. Have a wonderful day.